So this session, it's titled Understanding Parents' PTSD, Signs, Symptoms, Protective Measures, and Self-Care. It's Sunday morning. I know everybody's brains are full. I know my brain is full. I had a whole Shabbos, Thursday, Friday, hearing about kids in pain, understanding what's going on with these children, how to be able to relate to their struggles, how to be able to see the chiluk elikam imal in them. And we heard wonderful, wonderful, amazing speeches, uplifting speeches from some really unbelievable people. And I don't feel I'm on such a level. I'm a little bit more human. And I think most of us go through very human times. When a person has a child who's doing all sorts of things that are, let's say, their worst nightmare, they're not always in a perfect place. I was speaking to somebody last night. Friday night is when I finally get a chance to learn a little bit. So it was late at night, and I'm enjoying the peace and quiet. No, 2 nights ago. That's 2 nights ago already. It's okay. And I don't know, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I met somebody I'd met years ago. And what he does with his child is unbelievable. Unbelievable. He's taken her to the far ends of the world to show how much he cares about her, to be there for her, to do whatever he can. And I reminded him that when I met him, I don't know, it was 6 years ago, he was hoping that a truck would run over his daughter. I remember years ago I was at an event where there were different naskanim who got together, people working with struggling kids, off the derech kids. And I was horrified. Because these people, they were working with the kids. They weren't working with the parents. And when they were able to see that these are struggling kids. They were able to see that these are good kids that just have a lot of challenges in life, and they're lost, and they're struggling, and they're acting out, and they're dysregulated. And they were connecting with these kids and helping them out, and they were doing a good job. But they obviously weren't parents to these kids. And we were sitting around the boardroom. It was probably 25 people there. And each one after the next, they were sharing horror stories about the horrible parents that they were working with. And I was horrified because I got to know a lot of these parents. And they're really not horrible people. Most of them are very, very special people. We would think working in the kids that are falling out of the system, we would think that most of them, they're troubled kids. They're coming from very troubled families. That's what one might think until you're in this. And you meet these parents. And you meet some of the most special people you'll ever meet in your life. I don't have another way of seeing how this is a makkah for the generation. This piece doesn't make sense. The really horrible parents are not the ones that are having the really horrible kids. And chas v'shalom, I don't want to call them really horrible kids. They're not really horrible kids. They're special neshamas. What I found is the people that are really, really, really minimalistically functioning, their kids mostly struggle with emotional issues. This sugi is different. It actually takes to be very brave to go against the whole system. You have to be very brave. It takes a lot to say, I'm just going to drop out of school. It takes a lot to stand up, to fight the system, to fight your parents, to say life is not working for me and I'm going to insist on doing something different. They don't know what to do different because they're immature and they got all sorts of issues and there's nobody really there to help them, explain to them how to do it, and they're rejecting people's advice and help. So it comes out looking in a lot of stuff that causes us a lot of pain. But they have to have a certain amount of resilience to be able to do this. The kids that come from families that are low functioning, they're usually just low functioning. They're low functioning kids. So I'm sitting around this boardroom, and one Askin who works with kids, he's saying how one parent said that he wishes his child he could see him inside a box, and he wants to put the lid on it. And another Askin was saying, I wish my child died. That he heard that from a parent. And they went around and shared horrible stories. The point I want to bring out is that as a parent, it takes superhuman effort to be able to see what's going on with your child. I don't know, you have to have a siyata d'shmaya. It's beyond, you have to be a tzaddik. You have to be a tzaddik or a tzaddikas. Somebody that's so iskarbit, you learned every one of the Sifrei Musar. You spent years and years and years working on yourself. If you're going to figure out the right thing to say every time at the right time and not make any mistakes. As parents going through this, there's no doubt in my mind that every single parent who goes through this has not just a rough time, but they've developed real post-traumatic stress from this. When a person, I want to talk a little bit about the diagnosis of PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder. So unfortunately, if you pick up a DSM, a lot of your kids don't fit that definition. A lot of parents don't fit that definition. It's kind of a narrow window. It's defined as somebody has an overwhelming, life-threatening experience. And now they have all sorts of symptoms afterwards. They have flashbacks, they have triggers, they have symptoms of anxiety and depression. They walk around fearful. They lose their sense of safety in the world. In the clinical field, in this field, when you're working with these kids, you know that you could have full-blown PTSD without going necessarily through a life-threatening experience. If somebody went through years of abuse and they were never threatened with their life, sometimes they are. Most of the time they're not. Most of the time it's actually by somebody who's close to them. It's a sibling, it's a cousin, somebody they trust. They never felt like their life was threatened. They're going to have PTSD. If somebody has an overwhelming amount of negative life experiences to the point that it catches up with them, they're going to have PTSD, all the symptoms. A more correct definition of what real trauma is. What is trauma? The word gets thrown around. We throw the word around. There's trauma. I don't know. Everybody's traumatized. Yeah, everybody has certain traumas in their life. But what is trauma? When we go through life, we go through good times and we go through negative times. And these are experiences in life. We have good days and we have bad days. We have positive experiences and negative experiences. But they're within a window. Within a window of what life brings. And sometimes they're very, very painful and difficult, and they're not traumatizing. Emir Hashem, When everybody outlives their parents, it's a bracha to everybody that one day you're going to sit shiva for your parents. Lachar Meir V'Esrim. And it's very sad. And you'll cry, and you'll be in mourning. And if they live to 120, and they get old, and you're prepared for it, you're preparing for it, it's sad, and it's overwhelming, and you cry, and you're not traumatized. Because that's the way of the world. And we know this since the time we're 2 years old. People are born, and eventually people move on. But somebody dies at age 15 in a car accident, that's a trauma. It's not expected. It's not within our window of what we expect to happen in our lives. We need to be able to walk around and feel like we can understand what's happening in the world around us. We need to be able to feel safe enough that we don't think we're going to die at any second. When somebody dies at 15 years old and they were in perfect health in a car accident or they had a brain aneurysm, it's traumatizing. It's outside the view of what's normal to happen inside the world. When we got married, and they handed us this wonderful manual about how to raise children, it told you exact directions, what to do when they cry, what to do when they're upset, what to do, at what age you mechanech them, what do you tell them, the lessons in life. Perfect manual. It said nothing. No one told you anything about what you do when they go off the derech. What you do when you find out they're being Mechal Shabbos. What you do when they don't come home at night. It's outside our view of what's a normal experience in life. And something that happens outside of what we know how to process sticks inside our brain in such a way that it's just there. It's there, it's live. It doesn't go into a long-term memory experience. We can't calmly say, oh, this is what happened. Let me sit and think about what do I need to do in order to be able to respond in such a way that's going to really, really be effective. If somebody's child doesn't go home at night, they go into panic and fear, into desperation. If somebody's child comes into the house and they didn't like the supper and they toss it across the room and they throw an F-bomb at their parent and tell them that they wish that their parent was dead, our parenting manual didn't tell us how to be able to sit calmly and say, oh, I love you, Shefula. You must be really hungry. I'm sorry that you didn't like the supper tonight. We'll find a way that you can get some food and you can feel good about yourself. It's normal for when that happens, you want to kill your kid. And maybe you yelled at that child. Maybe you said something that's not your proudest moment in life. But we're human beings. We're human beings and we make mistakes. And it's okay to make mistakes. And you can go to your child afterwards and you can apologize. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared. I wasn't in the best place. I didn't respond in a way that I'm proud of. I really love you. I'm sorry you didn't get the supper that you were expecting. You must have had a really rough day. Let me go ahead and do something that can make it easier for you. If we go through enough experiences, the dread, a parent's worst fear, if their child falls out of school. It's the worst, it's a tragedy. It's their worst fear. I don't know how parents sleep at night. I don't know how they sleep at night. You don't. Yeah, you don't. If you don't know if your child's safe, if you don't know what they're doing, if you don't know the outcomes, the repercussions of some of the things that they're going to, who knows? You're looking at it looks like you're slowly burying your child. That's the way it looks and feels. Anyone who goes through this has experienced serious trauma in their lives. What are some of the symptoms of trauma? Well, you can be depressed, you can be anxious, you can have sleepless nights, you can feel like your world is falling apart around you, you can have a sense of worthlessness. These are all symptoms of PTSD. You can have a sense of worthlessness. You can feel like God doesn't like you. You lose your sense of trust in people. I heard a lot, kind of listening to some of the vibe, I heard a lot over Shabbos about how many people had negative experiences in the school systems. You have negative experiences in the school systems, you can feel like all systems are bad. We can't believe in any systems. Can't trust people. What happens with trauma, when it creates a sense when there's no safety, that safety spreads out to not just the area where the trauma happened, it spreads out all over the place. If somebody was attacked at night because they were mugged walking down a street in a safe neighborhood, they now feel like it's not safe to walk outside in a safe neighborhood. People aren't safe. The world becomes an unsafe place. It's very easy to go into a negative state. We see dark around us. It's very hard to see light. You see pain wherever you go. You see the problems. You get stuck in the problems. It's hard to see the solutions. These are all symptoms of trauma. I know most of the speakers are focused on the kids. All these kids are traumatized. There's absolutely no question about that. It explains a lot of their behaviors. But as parents working with these kids, it's not possible to go through this without experiencing your own level of trauma. And if you don't take care of it, you're at risk of really struggling. It affects a person's functioning. If a person feels constantly that they have no energy, low energy levels, if they feel like they're carrying so much of a load, that they feel weighed down all the time, they lost their spring in their step, they have a hard time smiling. It's not the way we want to raise our other kids. Not just these kids. And when you have kids that are struggling, it takes superhuman effort. And we're expected to be malachim, we're expected to be angels. So, I don't really like speaking. So if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to ask. My only issue is that we're short on time. If anybody has something that they want to jump in with, I'll be happy to kind of talk about it a little bit. Go ahead. Just talk loud so people could hear.
How does one feel safe in a world that feels unsafe? And just to take it further, how does one have and feel a loving and safe relationship with Hashem when we're running from Hashem to Hashem? How does one feel safe?
So the question was, how does one feel safe in an unsafe world? And how does one feel safe with Hashem when we're running to Hashem and from Hashem? We're talking about trying to understand the kids or to understand the parents? No, it's a real question because the question is true for both of them. Yeah, it's a wonderful question. Yes, it's a wonderful question. How does one feel safe in an unsafe world? Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, very good. Excellent question. Okay. So I don't want to ignore the first question. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the second question. How do you treat PTSD when you're in constant trauma? So when we say we don't want to do trauma work for a person if they're in an abusive relationship. We don't want to do trauma work to get them past their trauma if they're still getting abused at the same time. It doesn't make any sense. So how are you supposed to do trauma work while the situation is still going on? How are you supposed to feel calm when you don't know if your child is coming home that night? It goes back into the first question a little bit. If you're not living in safety, how can you feel safe? These are wonderful questions. I don't have easy answers. I don't have easy solutions. I want to just give perspective, and maybe people can go ahead, and if they can understand it a little bit, and if they can feel understood, they can see the value. They can see the value in being able to do the work of what they need to do, of finding the right supports and getting the right help for themselves. Because we can't help others if we need help ourselves. You can't make your child feel safe if you don't feel safe. It's impossible. You can't deal with your child's anger when you're angry. I do a couple hours a day I do private clinical counseling, only a few hours a day. The rest of my day I'm involved in working with struggling kids and their parents. In my clinical practice, a very high percentage of the people that I work with were these kids when they're on their way back. And they're young adults in their 20s, low 30s. A lot of them have anger at Hashem. And I know I'm being recorded, so I have to be careful about how I say this. Why did Hashem do this to me? What did I do that I got molested? Why did Hashem give me this pain?
The parents are angry also.
And the parents are angry too.
So this is with the kids.
Thank you.
The parents aren't angry. The kids
Yeah.
feel traumatized. The parents share. You're not a mother. I know you're a father, but you're not a mother. These kids lived in us for 9 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of our mamas.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That pain, I can't imagine that pain. We don't have a way to understand about why Hashem gave us these kids. We don't have a way to understand it. And if people are honest enough, they might see that they do have anger. What do we do to deserve this? All we try to do is be good people. As parents, I think saying this to what I found to be some of the most special people that I've met, I think most people that are here, most people that I know that have struggling kids, all they wanted to do was to do the right thing, was to serve Hashem, was to get married and have good kids. Show them how to love Torah mitzvahs. Show them how to be good Yidden. What do they do to deserve this? I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer about why kids get cancer. Maybe one day we'll understand. But we can recognize that this causes a tremendous amount of pain, a tremendous amount of mixed and confusing feelings. So the world doesn't feel safe. We have all sorts of very, very, very intense feelings. And then people on the outside expect us to be perfect. When your child came in and didn't like the supper, threw it in your face and cursed at you, and you lost it for a second because you hadn't slept for a week. And you're going to get this because the people that are working with these kids, not all of them have so much of experience. Not all of them have been inside your house and known you and seen that you're special people. And they talk, and you'll experience some of that pain. You'll hear people say negative things about you. And people will doubt your parenting, even when you're doing everything right. The world becomes an unsafe place. So the first thing that you could do, and this helps with any trauma, is you could find people in a similar situation, people who understand you, people that are in a better place, or people that are struggling in a way that can be supportive to you, and you get together as a community. And that's probably the single most powerful, most protective factor, is that you can connect with other people who understand you, who are supportive to you, who can be there for you. You're not alone. When you experience a problem that's overwhelming and you're completely alone, that's so much more that it's going to shut you down. It's going to take you over. It'll sabotage your brain. So you come to Keshe Nafshi Shabbaton. Come every year. Come twice a year. Come as many times as they make it. Find more friends that are in this situation. Go to support groups. Stay away from the people who don't understand it. That's probably the single most effective thing that you can do that will really be a protective factor. Anyone who wants to take medication for anxiety or depression, don't hold yourself back. You don't have to be a martyr. It's fine. You know, I wish we had given, so they gave out Tylenol here at the front desk. You should be giving out anti-anxiety medication. You should be giving out, what do you call that helps you sleep at night? Melatonin. Melatonin should be given out everywhere. Unfortunately, like if you go to like typical therapy, they're going to teach you skills. They're going to say, let's do deep breathing exercises. Now this is going to really help you out when your child is cursing at you, and your child has run away and you don't know if you have to pick them up at the police station. I'm just going to do deep breathing. Let me count to 10. No, it happens just as much. There's different reactions to trauma. There's different reactions to trauma, and men respond to things differently than women. The typical responses that we have to trauma are fight, flight, and freeze, and shutdown. So the fight will look like something like when you get upset, you get angry, and you lose it. The flight is when you run the opposite direction. And the freeze is when you just don't know what to do and you don't do anything. Shutdown is not spoken about as much. Shutdown is just your system starts shutting down. You don't feel anything. Most people alternate through different things. And I'm going to say that working with these kids, because it's an evolving situation and there's constantly different situations that present themselves. At some situations you might respond well. And in other situations you might find that you're entering a shutdown response. In other situations you might find that your response is going to be freeze. In other situations you just want to run away. I don't think that men are any different from experiencing trauma. Their response might be different.
The men could learn or be very busy at work. When the wife calls and says, get home now, and he's like, I have a meeting in 15 minutes, and I'm like, everybody is crying, or there's glass on the floor. The ladies we're dealing with everybody and everything. Don't forget, there's still baths, there's still supper, Shabbos is still coming, we still have to get to work.
Yeah.
The other kids doing work.
Yeah.
And then
One of the things that men, and I'm overgeneralizing, I really don't like doing this because there's a lot of men that are very emotional and a lot of women that kind of have certain ways of functioning that we would assume that are naturally like men. But if we kind of use the cliche what the men experiences and the women experiences, one of the things that men do a little bit better than women a lot of times are partitioning their brain. So first responders, Hatzalah men, policemen, firemen, it's very interesting that they're all called men. We don't have Hatzalah women, now they do a little bit. We don't have police women, it's not so often. They're kind of, when you have a police woman, people look at them and they're kind of manly. You don't want to mess with a police woman, that's for sure. don't have so many fire women. And the reason for that is there's a training that they need to go through, and it's something that men kind of take more naturally to. When a fireman has to go into a fire, they need to be able to think, where's the right place? What's the right thing that I should be doing? Should I be going into the fire? Should I be waiting for backup? Should I be going through the roof? Should I be going through I'm not a fireman, so I can't tell you the details of it, but you need to be able to think in a time of crisis about what the smartest thing to do is, what the right thing to do is, and how you do this efficiently. If there's a child on the 3rd floor in a burning building and you hear them screaming, if you listen to that child and you don't do what your training is, not only are you not going to be able to save the child, but you're going to put yourself in sakana also. Now you're going to have 2 people in sakana. So they train people. We're not going to hear the sound of that child screaming. If you're are there any first responders here? Any Hatzalah men? Right? You go through a training, you're going to kind of shut off your emotions. You're going to shut it off, and you're going to think, what's the right thing to do? I can't listen to the emotional pain of somebody that's hurting right now, or somebody that's like something terrible that might happen. We need to think about what the right thing to do is. Partition our brains. So they train first responders this way. We're going to not respond from an emotional place. We have to respond from a cognitive or an instructional place to think what the right thing to do is, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to do it well. So I was speaking once with Hatzalah in Lakewood, and specifically about like some of these sensitive situations where they have to respond to these crises that are happening with kids that have, all sorts of emotional issues. And when you have, a big kind of Shirley Hatzalah man who shows up, and it's a really sensitive situation, especially if it's a female, and especially if they've been hurt by a man, it doesn't feel the safest. And I was talking to Hatzalah about I wasn't talking to you, Rabbi Fried. I was talking with Hatzalah member about maybe having some women on the team, which Baruch Hashem they do now. And the response that I got is that we can't have it. The response that I got is they're too emotional. They don't know how to separate from it. Baruch Hashem, they do have this now. But this is a skill. I just want to talk about this for a minute, and I can really talk about PTSD and dealing with stuff for hours and hours and hours, and you probably don't have the brains for it, and we don't have the time. But this is one skill that we could practice. And if you're in this long enough, you don't have a choice. You can end up learning it by default. So the question is if you're going to learn it by yourself, or if you can be aware of it and you can try to put it in a little bit. You need to be able to dissociate a little bit from what's going on with your children. You need to be able to separate from it a little bit. Sometimes it sounds like, we don't care. It's not because you don't care. It's because you care too much. You need to be able to say, my child is going through whatever that my child is going through. I can't think about it every single second of the day. If I think about it every single second of the day, I am not going to function. I will not be able to be there for them. I won't be able to be there for my spouse. I won't be able to be there for my kids. Part of what drove me into working with families of kids is that when I would see that when one child struggles, a lot of time there are many, many children that struggle afterwards. And the reason for this, what I see is not because there's something wrong with the family. It's not because it's not a stable family. These kids have the situation with their kids has destabilized their whole family. If the family goes into a system that they're operating out of panic and fear, desperation, they feel like that they're sitting at the edge of their seat all day long. They're not getting any sleep. They're walking around feeling like, who knows what life is going to bring to me the next second. It's impossible to run a functioning family like that. And when the kids bring in chaos, it's chaotic. So we don't have time to practice this today about how to be able to partition your brain. But this is something. It's just another thing that you could try, and you're going to end up learning it by default anyway. You need to be able to separate a little bit. You're not separating because you don't care, and you're not separating that you're not doing anything about it. You're separating from some of those extreme situations that are going on around you that I'm choosing, that I'm not going to live with them at every single second of the day. somebody needs to go for therapy to help them learn these skills, go ahead and sign yourself up for therapy. You're entitled. There's nothing wrong with you if you're trying to figure out how to be a normal person when you have chaos going on around you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. There's no shame in it. There's nothing wrong with you if your child is acting really crazy and dysregulated and you're trying to figure out how to function. Absolutely nothing wrong with you. There's another piece that I feel that aside from skills, aside from a lot of skills that a person can work on, they work on with their friends, they work on with their therapist, they work on with their spouse, they come and hear divrei chizuk from all sorts of people. There's one thing that I feel that is necessary in order for a person to really be able to, if a person wants to be able to function, if they want to be able to wake up and have a smile on their face, when they have what they've always considered churban around them, when what they've always considered their worst nightmare, churban, destruction, if a person is walking around and their life is ruined, or they see their child is ruined, their family is ruined, I don't think that there's a way that they're going to be able to really be happy people, healthy people, functioning people. In order for a person to be able to deal with a situation like this and be okay with it, and be able to be who they want to be as parents, to be able to become some of those really, really special parents who have spoken over the weekend, and even those special parents, they've all had weak moments. It's not like they've always said the perfect thing. They need to be able to come to a place of deep acceptance. How? So, I'm going to tell you a story. And I feel it's not really, I don't think that I'm really the person to say how. I really don't think so. This is not something that comes from research. This is something, I don't have enough gaiva that I could say how. I don't have enough haughtiness that I could say how. But I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story of a very, very special parent, a mother, shared this story with me, and I got permission to say it over here. So, this was a lady who she was a good student. When she was younger, she was one of those kids who gave her parents nachas. She went to school and she absorbed all the information they gave in school. Constantly working on her midas, constantly developing knowledge, learning, soaking up all the messages that her teachers had told her. All she wanted to do was to serve Hashem. And she did a good job. And she davened that she's going to be able to grow into a tzaddikus, a neshes chayil, a Yiddish mama. And Baruch Hashem, she graduated high school and went to seminary, went to the typical system, and got married to a wonderful person who wanted to sit and learn and go into chinuch. And then she had a whole bunch of kids, beautiful kids. And she gave everything she had to her kids. Her whole life. This is what she was taught in school. You live for your kids. Your kids are your nachas. If you can get married and raise the next generation that are Shemrei Torah mitzvahs, you're surely going to get a place in the world to come. And she gave everything that she learned over to her kids. She showed them good midas, and she baked them amazing food, and she was involved in doing homework with her kids. Every project that they were doing, she was heavily involved in. She was waiting for them after school to give them chizuk and to be involved, and went to PTA. And everything was what she felt like she was doing Ratzon Hashem. She was doing amazing. And that went on for quite a number of years. When they're young, they look pretty innocent. And then one kid went off the derech. And then another one did. And then a third child went off the derech. and her life started to crumble. What do I have to live for? What could make me feel good today? My whole life, all I wanted to do was to serve Hashem, was to raise the next generation in Klal Yisrael, was to be able to be a good Yiddish mama. I'm going to teach Torah, mitzvahs, and love for Hashem. And they're not religious. And she started falling apart. And when her daughter was going off the derech and came home with, like, I don't know, purple hair and a new piercing, it was like an all-time low for her. And she was finding it hard to function. Rosh Hashanah time comes by, Yom Kippur, Seres Yemei Tshuva. And what is everybody davening for? She doesn't know what to daven for. She's already seen that no matter what she does, she doesn't have control over the outcome. Her kids are adults now, and they're going to choose what they're going to choose, and there's nothing that she can do about it. What can make her feel safe? And she secretly wished inside, Rosh Hashanah time, that doing the Sana Toikef, Mi Yichya, Mi Yamos, she's secretly wishing inside, I can't deal with this, it's too much. Hashem, take my life. Seres Yemei Tshuva goes by in Yom Kippur, and she's fasting. She doesn't know what to daven for. She's at an all-time low. So she's in her house, her husband's at shul, I don't know where her kids are. And she goes into her study, and she noticed the sefer that was lying there on the shelf, and it wasn't like put in. She says, let me pick it up and put it in its place. And she sees it's a chumash. It's this chumash. So she picks it up, and she just opens the page. And she opens up to this week's to the Parshas Vayigash. Yaakov has to go to Mitzrayim. And he's very nervous. Yaakov knows what's in Mitzrayim. At a certain age, you have to push it away a little bit. It happens all of a sudden, by the way. He's very nervous. He knows he's going into Tumas Mitzrayim. Yaakov knew. It says when Klal Yisrael came out of Mitzrayim, they were Memtes Shari Tumah. Yaakov knew what Mitzrayim was. This is his biggest fear, Yaakov Avinu. He's bringing his kids into the Eretz HaTmeo. Who knows what's going to happen to them? You know, they definitely weren't going to be like his Aseres HaShvatim right now, pure. You know, not a shemetz of psul in them. He's going into Mitzrayim, a place of tumah, far away from feeling Hashem's presence. So it says, Vayomer Elikim Yishal b'maris halaylo, and she reads, Vayomer Yaakov Yaakov. When it says a double lashon, it's lashon chiba. Hashem's saying, my dear son Yaakov. Vayomer Yineni, he says, here I am. Vayomer, it says, Al tiro mirdo Mitzrayim, don't be afraid of going down to Mitzrayim. Ki l'goy gadol asim chasham. You don't understand it, but I'm going to make you a great nation over there. And she says to herself, I don't know why I picked up this chumash, but Hashem's sending me a message. I'm living in a world of tumah. I'm living in a world, it's not the nachas that I expected. I'm not having these beautiful angelic kids who are nachas machines. I'm in Mitzrayim. And Hashem's telling me, Al tiro, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of going down to Mitzrayim. I'm going to make you great over there. It's a wonderful message, wonderful message. And it was a light went off inside her head. I'm living inside Mitzrayim. I'm living inside an Eretz HaTmeo. My house is not this house where the kids are coming home and talking Divrei Torah at the Shabbos table. I hear Divrei Nevolah maybe. I hear about like all sorts of things that I didn't want to bring into my house. I'm in Mitzrayim. But l'goy gadol, don't be afraid. L'goy gadol simcha Hashem, I'm going to make you great over there. And it gave her chizuk. And she was able to go ahead and say, Hashem sent me a message. It's okay. And that kind of percolated inside her brain for a while. And then she's thinking about the next words in the pasuk. It says, Anochi eredimcha Mitzrayim, I'm going to go down with you to Mitzrayim. I'm not here alone. Hashem says I'm going with you. You're in Mitzrayim, you're dealing with all of this garbage. You're dealing with all of these things that this is not something you wanted to do, but I'm going to be there with you. Hashem says I'm going to be there with him. I'm going down with you to Mitzrayim. V'anochi alcha gam aloi. I'm going to bring you out from there too. And she says there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Hashem is here with me, and Hashem's going to take me out. And then she said after a few weeks, she was thinking about this pasuk. It was like she had a nevuah. She was at her lowest point. She wanted her life to be taken. Hashem says, don't be afraid. I'm going to make you great over there. Hashem says, I'm with you on this journey, and I'm going to take you out. And then she says, what's the gam aloi? Noiche alcha gam aloi. What is this double lashon? I'm going to take you out, gam aloi. And she says she realized that she has the opportunity of a lifetime. This is her opportunity to grow. We're not here only to raise our kids. We're here to serve Hashem. And you can grow from serving Hashem in Mitzrayim. And even though she had only heard her whole life, those were the messages that she had taken in, being in high school, growing up. What she absorbed from her teachers is about her purpose in life is to raise the next generation of Shomer Torah mitzvahs. She's there for a purpose, even if they're not being Shomer Torah mitzvahs. And it's like, she said a light bulb went off in her head. She says, like, wait, some of my classmates never got married. It can't be that the only thing we're there for is to be able to raise the next generation. They never got married. Some of them never had kids. It can't be that they're only there for their kids. So, they have no avodas Hashem. Gam aloi, that you can go up also. Going down into this Eretz HaTmeah, there's an avodah over there. Hashem gave you a gift where you're really, really going to be tested. But it's going to bring the best thing, it's going to bring the best parts out of you. You're going to be able to grow from here like you've never been able to grow before. You're going to be able to serve Hashem in such a way that you never imagined in the past. When a child does everything right, it's not difficult to be a good parent. How much schar for being a good parent does a parent who their child does everything right and only wants to do everything right? There are some kids like that. A few of them, they exist. How much do we have to work as parents for those kids? How much schar do you get when your child does everything wrong and you're still being Oved Hashem? This is your greatest opportunity in life, is to be able to say that I can be Oved Hashem. I can be Oved Hashem in Mitzrayim. Yosef HaTzadik. This is when you become a tzaddik. So, I feel like I'm sitting with tzaddikim, and I'm not saying that to boost your confidence. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in false compliments. I would believe that. I believe everybody that's here, they're really tzaddikim. And you're tzaddikim because you're Yosef in Mitzrayim. Hashem has given you real challenges in life. Real challenges. Your worst nightmares. And he gives it to special people. He says, you can rise up. You can become great. I've always been very hesitant to tell this to parents, because we don't want to tell people, it doesn't feel good when you're going through something horrible and somebody says, oh, you're going to become a good person from it. It doesn't feel good. But this is not my message. I could say it over in somebody else's name who's done this journey. Do I have a couple minutes? When does the next session start? What's, are they waiting 11 o'clock? What's that? Five minutes? Okay. I want to do an exercise for 5 minutes. If I'm stealing time from somebody else, I really apologize. Is that you, Rabbi Ben Shushan? Okay. You'll sit and you'll participate for a minute. I want to do an exercise for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And you don't have to tell me after. If you want, you can tell me afterwards how it worked. I'm going to ask everybody if they can close their eyes for 5 minutes. I want you to see if you can identify where inside your body. Look inside your head, inside your heart. Check your whole body and see if you can identify where you feel the tremendous tsar of your child. See if you can see where you feel it. And see if you can label an emotion or two or however many pop up. What the emotion is that you feel right now. And as you're thinking of this place of pain, of your child that's in pain, and you notice what the emotion is, see if you can, how big does it feel? If it had a size, how big it would be. And if it had a weight, see if you can identify how many pounds it feels like. And if you can give it a color, what color would this tsar, this place of pain, be? And now look at it and see if you can give a shape to it. And see if you can identify what it feels like if you were to touch it. What's the temperature? How hot or freezing it is. Is it smooth? Is it rough? See if it makes any sound or if it's quiet. See if it has any movement or if it's still. And just sit with that for 5 seconds. Now I'm going to read this pasuk again. And as I do, I want you to envision how this place of pain changes. As I read the pasuk, I want you to see how the weight changes, how the temperature changes, how the color changes, how it feels different, how the size shifts, how it goes, how the movement of it changes, and how big it is. Hashem comes to you and he says, Yaakov, Yaakov, Yolosh Nechibo. And Hashem says to you, I'm going to go down with you to Mitzrayim. I'm going to go down with you to this place of disappointment, of shame, of pain. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to take you out too. I'm going to bring you up. It's going to be an opportunity for you to grow. As you sit with it, you're going to be able to grow. And as you hear these words, see how the temperature changes. See how much the weight has shifted. How many pounds does it weigh now? It's not going to disappear, but it will change. Notice its size. Notice its energy. Notice its movement. And see what color it is now. Thank you very much.